Many of our clients ask us about flooring solutions for the wet areas of a hospital, the areas where you're hosing down, like the dog wards. And those areas of the hospital are pretty difficult to figure out how to finish. Fortunately, there's really only 3 options for flooring for that portion of a hospital. And I will give you those 3 options. The first option and most obvious is a lot of people ask us about epoxy flooring. Epoxy flooring belongs to a group of flooring products called resinous flooring. It includes more options than just epoxy. And actually, we prefer cement resin or resinous cement, or there are a lot of different terms for it, but basically it's a mixture of cement and urethane resins. We prefer those to epoxy for a couple of reasons. Epoxy is more likely to fail as a result of moisture and to fail as a result of using a lot of hot water and chemicals, whereas the cement resins tend to be a little bit more durable. When looking for an epoxy or resin product, look for one that's 3/4, 3/16 to 1/4 inch thick, so a pretty nice thick floor. Avoid anything that's too thin or paint-like. In fact, almost anything that's really a thin or paint product will come right off the floor. And if you happen to have a painted slab, you probably know that it's already failing. So the reason that we like resinous flooring is that it has different options for sanitizing. Creating a sanitary joint between the floor and the wall is one of the most important factors in choosing a floor. And with this sample, you can see how the flooring product can be turned right up the wall about 6 inches to create that nice sanitary joint. When you're looking for a surface for the resinous flooring, you will see that there's a couple of options. One is a sand option, literally created by throwing or casting sand out onto the top surface and then rolling it over with a urethane top coat. The problem with that is that it's literally created by a couple of guys, usually throwing sand out over the floor, and that may create some inconsistencies in texture. It's really very dependent on the installation. So for our veterinary clients, most of them prefer the paint flake finish. And if I'll grab the sample again, show you what that looks like. It looks like a bunch of little flakes of paint literally thrown into the floor. And that has a little bit more of a consistent texture than the sand finish. Your next option for flooring is tile. And if you're going to use tile, I'm actually a huge fan of tile. If you're going to use tile, look for a porcelain tile. Fortunately, there's been a lot of diversification among porcelain products over the last few years, and there are a lot of options on the market. Porcelain tiles can be very smooth. They can be too smooth and too slippery. So look for something that's not polished, but just has a nice smooth finish. You can also ask your tile manufacturer about how to look for one that still has a good coefficient of friction, despite its smooth finish. And then to make this porcelain tile product sanitary, the key is to use an epoxy grout. When you use an epoxy grout, then you have a completely sanitary floor that resists any odors, any staining. So we always use epoxy grout. The tile floor can also have a nice sanitary joint between the floor and the wall surface by specifying a tile that has a little curve at the bottom, or cove, that goes up about 6 inches to create that sanitary joint. Both of those 2 products that I showed you are fairly expensive. The urethane or cement resin floor product is going to cost you somewhere around $9 to $10 per square foot. And the tile product may cost you $12 to $15 per square foot installed. So both of those products are expensive. If you're looking for a less expensive option, really our favorite and our default for less expensive option is just a sealer. A nice, good urethane sealer. That sealer will need to be redone every 6 months to a year depending on how you use the floor, but it is a low-tech kind of solution that can be redone periodically. And instead of the paint flake, when the paint flakes off the floor, a painted product flakes off the floor, it creates a very unsanitary and unsightly condition. When the urethane sealer comes off, you don't really notice it and you can reseal it. So the problem with just having a sealed floor, despite its great cost advantage, is that you'll see all the cracks and all the imperfections in the concrete, which is why you'd want to budget for the higher priced products if you can, and then default to the sealed floor if you cannot. A sealed floor will cost you somewhere between $1.50 and $2 a square foot, depending on the sealer. Some people ask us about polished floors. Polished concrete is very beautiful. It's a little bit expensive, and some of our clients say that it's slippery. So we just default to the sealer for a low-cost product. So I hope that gives you some nice options: resin cement, porcelain tile, or sealed concrete.